Hey, I'm Dr. Rob McKenna, and I'm so excited to get through to round two and be able to submit another video. You asked for a few things. You said more details about the subject, my expertise, research I've done, why in the world the world needs to hear this talk. And I think in my first video I expressed some of my expertise and my experience base. Like, I've just been around the block. I've published in research journals over the years. I've run a research team, written a couple of books. I've had a chance to speak at conferences, and I've worked with leaders, and I've been kind of a developmental mutt because I've been a scientist but also a practitioner and a leader myself, and a consultant, and worked with so many leaders over the years. And so I don't want to spend a ton of time in that space, but to get right to the point is that what is on my heart is what I describe as a whole leader reformation. I love in the invitation, you talked about what I describe as the imposter syndrome. I think you even used that language, but you made an encouragement to the people who were submitting these videos, and you said, our community will be deprived of your silence. If you bring silence, they will be deprived by the silence. And I gotta tell you, I've spent so much work encouraging reluctant leaders, people whose voices need to be heard. And it's a part of what this idea of a whole leader reformation is all about. And this is deeply embedded in my heart. I will tell you that I do believe that we are in the midst of a leadership crisis, a leader crisis, because what I see happening right now is a call for certain kinds of leaders, and a demand for certain kinds of leaders without a lot of talk about what it's going to mean to actually prepare those leaders. And a whole leader reformation is an amazing thing and a way to think about a response to the crisis that we face. And I just want to break down those words because part of my talk I would do this. But one is the concept of whole. Like, why is that important for us? And I want to ask you a couple of questions. I asked you a bunch of questions at the end of the last video, but I want to ask you a couple of questions. The first question is this: what would your life look like if it were more whole? What would your life look like if it were more whole? Every single one of us, if we stop to just embrace that question for a moment, we have this aspiration to wholeness. But the reality is that we are fragmented. So many leaders are fragmented and isolated and feel a sense of brokenness in spite of their aspiration to wholeness. And I want to suggest that doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but it's a part of the human experience. Now, the next question I want to ask you is this: what does that first question, what would you look like if it were more whole, have to do with leading? And I want to suggest it has a very, very important implications for what it means to lead. Because the question is this: what does it mean to develop a whole leader, to intentionally invest in the development of a whole person, a human being who is going to go out and lead? And this is one thing that I oftentimes feel it's necessary to set up is, what is a leader? I don't mean what is a qualified leader with a certain kind of, a servant leader or a sacrificial leader. I think that's important. But what, in its most fundamental level, what does it mean to be a leader? I don't care that much about leadership. I say that all the time. I care deeply about leader preparation. A human being who is going to do something that is quantitatively and qualitatively different from not. And I want to suggest to you that leading is like that. And that I will describe this if I get a chance to do this talk, but I define a leader, and there's a story I have around this, that leading is fundamentally about going first. And it may be going first to listen, it may be going first to express conviction or to take a stand, but it's about going first. And that when we go first, it is different. It introduces a whole nother set of issues and challenges. That's what the experience of leading is about. And so a whole leader reformation would be to look at the whole experience of a leader. That question you asked when you were encouraging people to bring out their voice is an important part of this, because there are 1,000 questions that we ask that stop us from speaking clearly. So one last thing I want to mention is that a reformation is a word that I use with intentionality, and we're very intentional about that, because we're not talking about a revolution. That a revolution is a movement against. But a reformation is a movement based on what we already know. And what we know is that the experience of leading involves a lot of different variables. And if we were to intentionally scaffold the experience of a leader and the preparation of a leader to think about their competence and why they were called to lead, and their motivations and the experiences that they've had that have taught them something, we start to put together those multiple variables. we actually could be more intentional about developing whole leaders. And so the last part of this is that I do have some principles that I've learned over the years, and our research has highlighted, are critical to what it means to do a whole leader reformation, a complete reformation in the way that we do things based on what we already know from 4 decades of research on the developmental journey of leaders. Oh man, and the topics would be this: focusing on the one. What does it mean to look with people and not at them? That we would invest in questions and not just answers. So often leader solutions are answers. We put forth pithy, sort of, here's the 3 ways to lead, that do not have the nuance necessary to actually prepare a deep-seated leader for the great things that are ahead and the storms that are ahead. And then also that it involves, whole leader preparation involves developing their own conviction and self-regard, as well as their capacity to pay attention to others. And so often we talk about one side or the other, and a whole leader perspective requires that. And finally is this: that a whole leader preparation and a reformation in our thinking would mean to invest in this for the long haul. That there is something bigger going on, that some of the investments we make in the leaders around us who are emerging and existing may be things that outlive us. And that's big news. So I'm just so grateful for this opportunity. I really hope I get a chance to have this talk and to meet so many of you who will watch this video. But yeah, just grateful for this opportunity.